Hey Restorers, thanks for checking out a fresh episode of the Restoration Today podcast. Today I'm excited to have a friendly face rejoining, a friend from the industry, Alex Duta. He's the founder of Albyware. If you are here and you haven't heard of Albyware, I'm sorry, but you're probably living in a cave somewhere. So come join us out in the real world. And I'm excited to have Alex here because he is just, I have to say, one of the most driven people in the restoration industry. Like the amount of energy that Alex has to pour into the industry and Albyware and his team and his family and all of that. It's like I watch him from afar and go, I don't know how you do that. So give me some of that energy and those vibes. So Alex, thank you very much for being here. I'm going to toss it over to you to have you introduce yourself and share a little bit of background about Albyware as well for people who aren't familiar with Alby.
Wow, Michelle, thanks so much for the intro. You do such a great job. I need some of your energy to start my podcast when I do podcasts because I'm always like, hey, welcome to the podcast. All right, tell me everything, Michelle.
Yeah.
But yeah, nice to meet everybody. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Alex Duta, former restorer turned techie. Had started early on my career straight out of high school within restoration. Spent some time with my father building this company called Romextera in the Chicagoland market to a decent sized company, found problem of tech within the space and decided, hey, that seems like a cool problem to solve. And then went on to found Albyware with one of my best friends. And we're currently one of the job management CRM softwares within the space. And we're just trying to focus heavily on solving the real world problems of restorers. And personally, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a son. I'm all over the place. So
all over the place. So you are in probably one of the most competitive spots of the restoration industry. There's a lot of technology out there and a lot of technology continuing to emerge. It seems like every trade show, there's a new company out there. So how have you managed to stay competitive and present in a market where there is so much competition all the time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the number one thing we do is we just focus on our mission and we don't really pay attention to what goes outside of our mission. And if you'll start looking, every competitor has their own positioning and their own beliefs. So here on Alby, we just want to build the best product for the restoration contractor. And we pride ourselves in building what's called a product muscle or an iterative process through which we're just building upon the building blocks of a product to make it easy to use for restorers. And we're 100% devoted to restoration contractors, no strings attached to other contractors or insurance carriers or anything like that. So that's how we differentiate. And it's kind of instilled within our DNA, and investors have loved it. Contractors love it. So we're, pretty happy.
Okay, so talking about investors, how many iterations of funding have you been through at this point? Like what round are you on and what's next?
Yeah, so we've raised our Series A earlier this year. We're marching towards our Series B, which is going to be Q1, Q2 of next year. And for those that don't know, like all these series, basically tech startups have two options. They could be what's called bootstrapped, meaning they're self-funded by the owners themselves, or they could choose to be venture backed. If they're venture backed, they go out to the markets and ask for capital in exchange for building this great idea. And the limitations of capital don't really exist. You can then go build what you need for your customers. And typically every round you have to solve a different problem. You have to check off different boxes. You have to grow at a specific rate to make investors happy. So we did a pre-seed round, which was our first round, which was basically me, my partner, some friends and family. Then we did a seed round, got into Y Combinator, which was this incubator for tech startups. After our seed round, we closed a $8 million Series A round, which was earlier this year. And now we have had great traction. We've proven that the restoration market deserves tech. And we're going to go in for our Series B round here, Q1, Q2 of 2024.
So do you feel immense pressure when it comes to investors like this, or do you have kind of like a high tolerance for, I think all business owners are different, right? And some have a higher tolerance for the risk and stuff like this and having to meet the expectations of the investors versus others would be like, I don't think I could live that life, which I think I'm probably more on that train. So I think I'm inspired by you watching your ability to keep pushing forward toward these goals. And like, do you have fear associated with this or worry, or you just know like, your vision is so clear and your team is so solid that you know you're heading in the right direction or somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, one of my philosophies is abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset. Most people operate under scarcity mindset. There's only so much within this area or this space. versus I believe that there's enough of everything everywhere. So when it comes to investors, obviously, yes, there's a lot of pressure. We're playing in the NFL here. We really have to deliver. We're taking some serious money here. But, without the capital, it's impossible to build product for restoration companies. Like it's very hard to keep up with modern day technology. So we know it's needed. And the whole team knows, hey, this is hard, but it's a startup. This is where we're going. The vision is clear and expectations are higher than normal. It's not going to be your typical 9 to 5 job. That's for sure. But look at the impact. We're all driven by the impact, by serving an industry that really didn't have capital in the industry before. Like restoration tech, other than a few people, didn't really have capital because, the capital markets didn't find restoration. Like if you ask a normal person what a restorer is or what they know of a restorer, they probably won't know what a restorer is. And they'll think, oh, it's only when hurricanes hit. So restoration never had a capital influx in technology. So therefore it limited the restorer because certain job management systems didn't have the capital to invest into product and build all the things that, other industries have. Like in tech, for example, having a CRM or a support system that has a phone and text capability is like, you need that. It's like a given, right? Within tech. Within restoration, like we still have like apps that are downloaded on your phone or onto your laptop that are rather outdated because there hasn't really been anybody to say, oh, I see the potential in restoration contractors.
Okay, so going into that, how has being a restorer kind of in your past life helped your vision for what is needed on the software side for a contractor? I know that is probably a very obvious answer, but I'm curious what you would say.
I think tremendously in all aspects. I got during the I think it was like about 7 to 8 years before I left from Xterra to start Albi officially. During that time, I mean, I understood the industry in and out, and I understood the pain points that restorers go through, as opposed to just being in tech or being from outside of the industry. You don't understand that, the dynamic of technicians. You don't understand the dynamic of getting paid. You don't understand the scaling points, right? Every single couple $1 million, it's almost like you have this ceiling that you have to bust through, and it's very painful to go through. And I think what it did for me was make me understand the pain points of restorers. And then, from there on, I could teach my staff members. I now have the ability to take staff members, drop them into the restoration environment, and make them understand. So we're very intimate to the space.
How has it been recruiting people into Albi? I know that your team is constantly growing. You're always looking for more people. Do you find that because you're more like tech startup space that you're able to attract kind of different people, different talent versus a more traditional company? I don't know what else to call it, but you get it.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I think tech has its benefits, and a lot of people probably there's more people that prefer an in-office tech job versus the trades. However, I think, after the Great Resignation, everywhere it was very hard to find people. And we, just like restorers, we struggle finding great people. That's kind of a given. And you have to do more than just put a job post up somewhere to find a person. We are lucky and fortunate. We have a very diverse workforce. We have people from pretty much everywhere in different industries. We have restoration folk, ex-restoration experts, and then we have ex-tech gurus. So it's been pretty cool. And kind of combining both minds is an awesome dynamic. Having the ex-restorer who was a project manager, or Mike Brill, who's our success manager. He was a general manager of a large restoration company here in Chicago, and then combine him with Shmuel Sony, who was a Microsoft geek, right? And bringing them in the same room and having them basically talk about the pains of restorers. It's super cool.
So talk about the journey that you've kind of been on for more than a year now, I think at this point, related to, I think, health and your energy and what you're able to put into your business and your family. Like what have you done over the last year to really, probably more than that, to change your ability to be there for your business and be there for your family? And what kind of impact has that had now?
That's an awesome question. So I guess straight out of, even in high school, business, entrepreneurship, wealth was super high priority for me. I started, selling t-shirts. I had a snow removal business while being in high school, did all kinds of stuff, DJing, videography, so on and so forth. And this restoration company was just hustle, 16-hour days, up in the middle of the night. Chicago's polar vortexes were awesome, right? And it was all about like wealth, 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 money, 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 build up your team, building legacy. And then I recall, I think it was 2019, no, it was 2020 or maybe 2021, one of the two. I was at an all-time high, teaching a class for restorers, sales boot camp. And my wife calls me up and she's like, hey, I have COVID. I tested positive for COVID. Come on home and isolate. I'm like, great. Did the class remotely, didn't think anything of it. Eventually I got COVID too. And it was an all-time high in the Albee career. We had just gotten our first round of funding, everything. And I just pretty much got plopped up from regular life and thrown into this jail cell of a hospital. And I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. Frankly, nobody was sure if I would make it or not. I mean, I wasn't like intubated, but high oxygen, like blood clots throughout my legs, could not move. And it was a long recovery period. And at that point, I realized there's more to life than just the wealth, right? And I was like, all right, I have to do something, right? My wife was pregnant with my daughter at the time. Like, I was like, okay, I can't miss out on these things. So I was like, okay, let's figure out this whole health stuff. And I went on like a little bit of a health journey, went through 75 hard. And at first I was very like skeptical. I'm like, it's going to take away from business. I have to now, if I'm working, 60 hours, 70 hours a week, I have to now take 10 hours a week of precious time from business and then go and focus it on my health to be able to accomplish this. And I wasn't super excited about it at first, but what I ended up happening was it kind of was integrated. The more I put into my personal journey, the more I put into my health, the healthier I ate, the more I exercised, the better I showed up both personally and professionally. And eventually I kind of distilled it down after, reading a lot of books into, I think there's 4 pillars of life and all 4 need to be integrated. And the first one's wealth. I think is important as an entrepreneur. You want to, build up wealth in the sense of leave legacy, build an empire. Like that's typically what drives entrepreneurs. But the second one is health. There's no point to building an amazing business if you're going to die and drop dead one day from a heart attack or whatever, right? The third one was love. There's no point to build your business and then have your wife divorce you and, then you go depressed and so on and so forth. And then the fourth one was spirituality. And that was kind of something I mastered within the past year, I would consider, but there was a whole religious conflict in my life, I would say, and kind of questioning, okay, what's the greater meaning of all of this? And eventually, like whatever religion you are, even if you're not religious and you're spiritual, I think it's important to kind of identify the laws of spirituality that exist in the world, call it karma, call it do good, call it do something for the greater good, have something more important than just yourself. And I think those 4 pillars need to be balanced. And we all think that we have to take from one to give to another. But once you master keeping all of those at like 100% in all 4 aspects, it's like magical how your life just transforms. So.
Yes. Okay. So give some more concrete examples of the business side of things. Like I know that you've been able to bring some of your fitness and health related stuff into business relationships that have been fruitful, right? Found different ways to connect. So share a little bit about that. I think I probably led you into it good enough and you know what I mean. So go for it.
Of course. Yeah. So, bar time with the bros or bar time with prospects turns into running time with the bros or going for a hike with prospects. Instead of going out to eat with a really close coworker, come over to my house. We have food at home and it's healthily cooked, right? So all of these things you can, if you're intentional about it, you can kill 2 birds with one stone. I do something right now called Get to Know You within the company where anybody in the company can book time through my assistant on my calendar and we could just go for, whatever. Let me get to know you. And those turn into walks. Those turn into runs. Like the other day I ran with one of my coworkers, one of our sales development representatives, and I just went and we ran for 5 miles. So you could integrate those things. And if you set yourself up for success, like I travel a lot. So anytime I travel, I get protein shipped, I get electrolytes shipped and stuff like that to my hotel. You can set these systems up to where it's all integrated. You don't have to not travel for business because you're going to eat unhealthy or travel less. You don't have to not put 110% of effort into business to go take care of your health. So I hope that's kind of where you were going to.
It is, yes, that's exactly where I was going to. And talk about how your productivity tools. I know that you're big on productivity as well. And that's something I think that in the digital modern age can be really difficult when your phone is constantly going off and you have notifications going everywhere. How do you prioritize your time and figure out, especially as the leader of a growing organization, what you're putting your time and your energy into and what is going to have to wait?
Absolutely. So I had we were actually clients of Viola Management Associates, and Bill Prosh was one of our consultants early on at Romextera, and he's like, Alex, you're all over the freaking place. You need to take a time management class. I'm like, great. So I go on, I buy the time management class, I put it in my calendar, and something else pops up, and I don't show up. And at that point, I realized, I have a problem with time management. And kind of a couple years down the road, it didn't happen right away. I kind of adopted this mantra of life by design, not by default. So
Yeah,
that means that I'm not going to let life take me or pull me in whatever direction life wants to pull me. I'm going to be
yeah,
intentional on how I design my life and how I take care of everything. So I adopted this thing called, well, a couple of different principles, but there's this book called Buy Back Your Time. One of my mentors, Dan Martell, wrote it. And it's the concept of hiring an executive assistant and planning your time and being intentional about your time. And everything goes on your calendar. So like my number one productivity tool is my calendar. Everything is in my calendar, and not just business meetings, not just Zoom calls. In my calendar, I have my workout time. I have Sophia time dedicated in my calendar, because your calendar is your visual representation of the most finite resource you have. And that is time. That is the only thing. Like money is abundant, love is abundant, everything else is abundant. The only thing that's man-made and there's only so much of is time. So you go into your calendar and you establish your perfect week and you grab all the ingredients that are important for you. And I should see on your calendar love time, like time that you want to spend quality time with your significant other. If you have kids, you have a duty to your kids to be there for them. So I should see time for that. If you want to be healthy, I should see time for when you're eating, when you're meal prepping, when you're working out, right? Then the high level business stuff. I'm not going to go ahead and work on $10 tasks when I got to coach a team. So all of my one-on-ones with my team members, all of my coaching, that takes top priority, right? My rocks and my strategy time is in my calendar. And then whatever's left, those little gaps, if I want to go walk around and BS around with team members, I'll happily do it. If I want to let something else distract me, I'll happily do it. And then the other thing I'd use is do not disturb mode. So like my phone is always on do not disturb. I do not allow Facebook, Twitter, anything distract me from what I'm doing. I'm 100% present at what is scheduled on there. And in my free time, if I want to go check and look for information on there, I can go there. But like the number one time killer, I think, for most people is the fact that distractions come in. There's only a certain amount of people that can call me or text me and can disrupt me from what I'm doing. There's 6 of them. And aside from those 6 people, I really don't care, right? Like I will go there and check that when I have time, because it's super easy to be very reactive and catch yourself with so-and-so said something and then it daisy chains to something else. And then you never get what you intend to do. And then you live that life by default versus the life by design.
What percentage of the time are you on point with this blocking? Is it like 90%? Is it 100%? I'm curious. And did it take some stamina to build up to, it had to have, I think, took some learning and some discipline. Maybe that's a better word to actually stick. Because I think all of us have been through experiences where we've blocked out our calendar. And then, like you said, like, well, that was there, but I'm going to go do this instead. And then it's all to hell. So
yeah, I would say 90% ish. Even Abby, my executive assistant, knows that Alex still wants to feel like he could do whatever he wants to do whenever he wants to do. So, there are times where, I'll purposefully ignore a task or two that's on the calendar, because I also put tasks on the calendar, like sign this document, whatever. That's not that important. I'm going to go for a walk. I like having that power. It's like a treat for me. But then what happens with that is it gets moved. So there's fluidity, but the things get moved. They never get deleted. So let's say I had a day from 8 to 5 and then something came up. It's like, okay, great. I can't show up for that meeting at 12, but it doesn't just poof disappear. It gets moved to another time slot of where it is. And it's important to have fluidity. It's important to, be able to have the flexibility. If something comes up, go tailor to it. The other thing we have is a system of like 1, 2, 3. One is cancel everything or anything. This is top priority. So literally tell Abby, like if an investor or something, or let's say, I don't know, at Romextera, we had a workers' comp incident, an employee fell off a roof, right? Okay, that's a 1, right? Drop everything and go. 2 is like, yeah, within the next 24 to 48 hours, I can handle it. And then 3 is sometime it would be cool to do this. And then I have systems for like dumping stuff out of my head. So, ooh, this came up. I should meet up with Michelle in Vegas. Great. Let me just put that there. It's not really urgent. I don't need to worry about it right now, but I know it's put somewhere. So,
Okay. I'm trying to decide where I want to go next. Okay, so let's talk about how you've managed to. So, in my mind, you not only work for a tech startup, you're also in restoration, and those two together are like a recipe for burnout, 100%. Like, restoration alone is a recipe for burnout. Now you've done two different things. So, but you do continue to find time for your family, for activities that you want to do, like being a pilot, those kind of things. How have you managed to navigate that space and make sure that you have time for your family and have time for hobbies and to develop yourself outside of Albie?
I mean, I'm going to say the calendar thing helps the most, but
Yeah.
being intentional and saying this is the recipe. So with my perfect week, right, I have 3 nights a week with my daughter and then 1 Saturday or Sunday with my daughter alone, just with her. So that way my wife, like that was based on my wife's needs for her to be able to go do her nails, go to the gym, whatever, right? So you start with a blank canvas and you put the non-negotiables. So every single day and every single week has non-negotiables. I want my wife to be happy. I know that even though she's a stay-at-home mom, she needs time to be able to do her things. So I set those up, right? I know that like working out every single day is important for me as a person, and I've seen the difference. So there is a daily non-negotiable of workout every single day. So when I created my perfect week, basically you have your calendar, but over to the left, you write down the non-negotiables. Meditation is a non-negotiable. Spending time with my wife is non-negotiable. Date night. So every single Friday, we ended up picking that day, but every single week, once per week, we found it important for us to have one-on-one time or one-on-one with friends and have a date night. So that was a non-negotiable. And then, so working out, we talked about meditation. We talked about the coaching meetings with my team. Those are all non-negotiables. So I have 16 direct reports that report directly with me. They all get an hour, and that's a non-negotiable. My rocks, so we implemented EOS. So every 90 days, every single manager and team member has a big thing to do. So there's 2 1.5-hour sessions every single week for that. And yeah, basically you write down everything you're going to do, and then you fill it into the calendar. And then there's very few available slots that then get booked in afterwards. The other thing I like doing is I believe in the integrated life. So anytime I can kill multiple birds with one stone, it's like a win for me. So, okay, running with a client. So I went to Contractors Connection. I had a friend of mine who's a restorer. Hey, let's go for a run around New Orleans. It wasn't the best idea ever. We ended up in some rough areas, but it did the trick. So instead of exactly, and it was hot, but instead of staying up late and drinking till 2:00 in the morning, we woke up at 5:00 in the morning, went for a run. A lot of times, my family comes with me on travel. So just because I'm traveling doesn't mean I don't get my family time. So I pack them up, we fly together, we go wherever, and just kind of implementing those systems of saying, these are my non-negotiables. No matter what, these are the things that are important to me, and they have to happen every single day, every single week, X amount of times per month.
So is personal development and leadership development one of your blocks? Because I think you like to read and like to grow yourself. Yes. So is that something that's strategically planned into your schedule?
Yes. I mean, if we really want to, I can share my screen real quick. But yeah, so you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So wake up time is in my schedule every morning when I wake up and eating, and then my drives, and then my workouts wherever they are. And then my family time is in the calendar. Reading, podcast, creative time is in my calendar. And then different meetings are color coded based on the different things. So, whether I coach, recruit, strategic, shining my light. This week was a pretty light week. Fundraising, so on and so forth. Flying. So this morning I went flying, and I have that every single week in my calendar. And then when we go down here, there's Sophia time. There's date night. Here's a haircut. Moving on, same thing. So everything, and then the white spaces are the ones that I have to fill. Very little white spaces, and everything else is pretty intentional.
Did it take some time to build up getting used to seeing your calendar that full, even though it's really not full? to me, I could tell that, like, because I do similar blocking to you,
Mm-hmm.
but I like it when there's the white space,
Mm-hmm.
even though I need to block it off better. Anyway, did that take some reframing in your mind originally to realize that all the time that's blocked off doesn't actually mean you're busy in that moment, or you
Mm,
just got used to it?
not really. I got used to it. So the way I think about it is everything I do has to like light me up in some sort of way.
Yep.
And just because it's booked doesn't mean it's something bad. Like it's something that I enjoy doing. Because if you don't have it booked, then you have to think about what you're going to do. And that's when you kind of get yourself distracted. So I'm like borderline ADHD. So if I have time to sit around and I don't have something coming up next, that's when the squirrels come up. And
Yeah.
yes, you need creative time, right? So you just
Yeah.
block off creative time within your calendar, and then okay, you're going to do that. And James Clear's Atomic Habits, they even talk about anchoring to different areas. So creative time happens in this armchair in your living room, right? Eating happens at the dining room table. Playing with Sophia happens in her playpen. So that way your brain like then becomes wired, and it becomes easy. You don't have to think about things. You don't have to think about when I'm eating or, oh, do I even have time
Yeah.
to eat today? It's in there. So
Oh, the swirls come out. That's when the swirls come out.
yeah,
That's a
yeah,
great phrase. I think
yeah.
any entrepreneur can relate to that. The swirls come out, and it's like, oh, shiny things. That's a good idea.
Yep.
Okay, so before we wrap it up, share some of your favorite leadership resources. You shared a few throughout this, but share your top favorites.
Hmm. So I think the most underused thing within restoration is coaches, mentorship groups, mastermind groups. I mean, I think that every problem you have is a who problem, not a how problem. So I have
Mm,
a nutritionist, I have a personal trainer, I have a person in every single specific department I could rely on that's a mentor to me. So when it comes to fundraising, I've got, actually 4 different people I can go to for fundraising. I'm in various mastermind groups, right? Finding somebody who's already done something and paying them, and it will cost a lot. Like there's some that I've paid $100,000 in a year for, but paying them to give you the answer of how they did it will save you an enormous amount of time and pain and pressure and so on and so forth. So the number one thing I don't see within restoration is I don't see restorers belonging to mastermind groups. I don't see restorers creating mastermind groups, hiring coaches. I don't see the little guy hiring the big guy who's already gone to $40 million a year and said, hey, look, you're in a different market, whatever, teach me, right? And that's like the most powerful leadership resource in general. And even the top coaches of the world, like it just keeps going up. So like one of my mentors is Dan Martell, and one of his coaches is Ed Milet. So he basically pays Ed Milet to teach him, and then he then pours into us, and then I'm actually a coach also and a mentor also. So then I go pass it down, and it just keeps passing down. The second thing is reading books. I mean, books are the most amazing
yep.
thing in the world because there's somebody's knowledge. They fought with something for 8 to 10 to 12 to 15 to decades, right? And then they distilled it down to something you could read in like 6 hours, right?
Yep.
And every single book, like you could literally walk away from business self-help books, not necessarily fantasy books, but business self-help books. You read from them and then you could implement right away.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing. And then podcasts, a lot of people, there's obviously all kinds of influencers out there, and some of them are well-intended, some of them are not well-intended, but a lot of times I feel like restorers are hesitant. Oh, Grant Cardone is like the rah guy, for example, which I didn't really like Grant at first until I started reading his stuff. And within every single influencer or every single rah thing that you might be shying away from, if you go from it like, what can I learn from it? It's super powerful. And 80% of business is mental. It's you. Restorers in
Mm-hmm.
this industry have a lot of technical knowledge, a ton. We have IICRC, we have RIA, all of this. We lack the mindset. And I think that's why
Yeah.
the average restorer does only $2 million a year and can't break through that ceiling. So, yeah, breaking your mindset, breaking your beliefs, breaking through all of that is, I think, the most important thing that all leaders within restoration need to do. Stat.
Stats. I love it. Okay, Alex. Well, thank you for all of your wisdom and all your insight. And I appreciate how authentic you've been in this conversation, and you've shared a lot of like personal stuff and tidbits. So I appreciate that. Is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap it up?
I mean, I do have 2 things actually. So one is I talked about books. I am releasing a book. I'll give you more information and a copy.
Yeah.
But basically, I'm in the process of publishing a book. It should be by the end of the year. It should be done. It's called Restoration Millionaire. Was what the title of a bunch of people picked. And basically, it's the journey of how to scale your restoration company. And then two, we do have an event coming up. We're launching this thing called Evolve, which is a mindset spin within the restoration industry. So it's going to be a mini summit all focused around mindset. We have a couple speakers that are going to come, including somebody who was homeless once and then grew and scaled his business and sold to private equity for a high multiple. And that's going to be in January in Chicago. So I'll give you more information for you to put in the link below about those two things. And then, as always, follow me on social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of those. I record everything I do and I pour it back into the world. I'm not really monetizing it. I just do it because, spirituality, you give into the world and eventually it might come back. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Alex. I appreciate having you here, and I look forward to seeing you at some events, if not for the rest of this year, but for sure in 2024, because event season takes off right at the beginning.
100%. Thanks so much, Michelle. Appreciate you.
For more Restoration Today and the latest news, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, and find the latest episodes of the Restoration Today podcast on your favorite podcasting platform.